Welcome to the Future of Political Consulting by the AAPC, where we explore the evolving landscape of political consulting in a rapidly changing world. The AAPC is a bipartisan membership organization that represents professionals working in the political consulting industry. Today, AAPC's Director of Advocacy and Industry Relations, Julie Sweet, speaks with Thomas Peters, the co-chair of the AAPC Political Messaging Committee and founder and CEO of RumbleUp, about the standards meant to curb bad practices amid the rise of political texting.
Thanks, Edgar. One edit I'll make is that I'm Julie Sweet. Really good to be with you all today. And I am joined by Thomas Peters, who is the co-chair of our political messaging committee. And the reason why that is important is because if you're not familiar with the AAPC committees, they are bipartisan, 50-50 participation by Republicans and Democrats. And we have two co-chairs for each of our committees, one Republican and one Democratic representative. So that co-chair is really important to me because we work pretty hard to keep the right balance and reach consensus. So I'm really excited to be here with Thomas. Thomas, can you introduce yourself quickly to folks?
Sure, Julie. I run the political texting platform RumbleUp as the founder and CEO. I founded RumbleUp in early 2018, and since then we've worked with over 3,500 center-right organizations. We also do a lot in the polling and survey space, um, and then official texting at the state, local, and federal level. And it's been a wild ride, and it's exciting to be with you, having worked on the messaging code of ethics. And yes, I do share the crown with Jamie. He is a great partner, and I really enjoy the collaboration across the aisle. Um, Texting, obviously, for our clients is a fiercely competitive thing, but as vendors, we have more in common than on average. So it's been a lot of beautiful friendships have come from it, and I really appreciate that.
That's great. And a good plug for the AAPC and why participating in a bipartisan organization like ours is so valuable. Uh, so you mentioned the guidelines. We just did a webinar, kind of coming fresh off the live airing of it, if you will, and where you outlined what the guidelines are, and you spent a little bit of time talking about the why behind them. But I'm wondering, like, why now? What kind of got the bee in your bonnet that now was the time to put these guidelines together?
So I often say that we were one of the first political texting platforms, and I intend to be the last for as long as political texting is a thing, which it appears to be um, on very solid ground. And a lot of that has been because of the gradual regularization, standardization, and the quality controls that didn't exist when I started political texting in 2018. That framework of compliance and balancing consumer protections along with the First Amendment rights of political speech has been sort of the high wire balancing act that was very lonely for many of those years during the sort of like Wild West days. And so the code of ethics was something that I'd been thinking about. It really, in the aftermath of the 2024 election, it was sort of like now's the right time. And it's really critical to be invited to join the APC messaging committee because this is the professional place for people who do this work. And without that structure, I couldn't have done this on my own, nor could have Jamie. I think everyone on the committee would say the same. Why is it important? Is because texting continues to increase in volume every cycle. The last solid numbers I have are actually from 2020, and that was a minimum of 16 billion political texts sent. And I think political spending is rising about 43% every 2 years. And so you can count on that number probably having topped 20 billion in 2024, and it shows no signs of slowing down. At the same time, texting gets a bad rap. It's the bad actors, it's the bad experiences that have attracted a lot of the media's coverage of this. And I think this webinar and episode are well timed because next month we go into Thanksgiving and we're going to be around the dinner table. And for those of us involved in political texting, that can lead to some awkward conversations, which I relish because I get to clarify what I do and what my clients do, and being able to talk about things like a code of ethics, which has real teeth and has real buy-in, is I think consoling to the consumer, to the average voter who enjoys receiving good texts and hates receiving bad, annoying, numerous texts.
Hmm. I thought you were going to say we're coming up on an election where there's going to be a lot of text messaging, but that Thanksgiving table is also critical. Um, so one of the things that we like to talk about on this podcast, the future of political consulting, is where is not only the industry, but what are the innovations in different channels that we think are really going to be transformative. Um, but I think I'm trying to figure out the best segue here is like where what are you most excited about looking forward? But I'm also curious about why this ethical code of conduct is so important to the longevity of the channel, right? They seem to go hand in hand, right?
Yes. So any new technology tends to be, for lack of a better term, pretty frothy at the beginning. And we see that in AI right now, where it's sort of this Pandora's box where all these cool things pop out. There's also some really ugly things. And it's happening so quickly, you kind of have to like sort the good from the bad and see what's going to stick and what's not. And with AI, it's sort of like the things that were hot and exciting in AI 3 months ago already feel really dated because it's moving really quickly. And I think texting has been on that same trajectory where it was only in 2016 on the Bernie Sanders campaign that P2P texting was first, deployed at scale. And it was really only in 2020, though there were early adopters in 2018. It was only in 2020 during COVID on the Republican side that texting really went mainstream because all the in-person events shut down. And so political campaigns were desperately looking for non-in-person ways to reach voters, and texting came to mind. As far as where the future goes now and what I'm excited about, I think, and this goes to the continuity and longevity question, is that the investment that our best partners and clients make in texting well is not just a nice to have, it's a must have. It used to be that texting was so novel in 2018 and people received so few text messages that the quality didn't matter as much as the just massive visibility. Texts are opened and read in 90 seconds, and you would see like donations coming in and be revenue positive on the first send. Like that was just extraordinary. And that led to sort of the avalanche and the pile on, especially in the fundraising vertical. But we've seen a lot of success in other ones as well. But you fast forward now to 2025 and looking into the 2026 and beyond, the text message inbox is getting more full, and people are a little bit tuned out of a lot of the old playbook. And so, the first time you introduced a 10x match, whether or not it was actually 10x match, it juiced the fundraising numbers. The first time you introduced yourself and said, "Hey, I want your vote" via text message, and someone replied and they got a response back from a human volunteer, that boosted turnout. Now I think the quality, the bar for quality has risen quite dramatically. And certainly in the world of iOS 26, where visibility is not as guaranteed and you really want to elicit a response from that end user to inbox fully if they have the message categorization feature on. Um, Engaging two-way texting is coming back and getting a renaissance, which is awesome because that's why I moved into texting to begin with. Before this, I ran a smartphone app building platform called UCampaign, and we built the apps for Donald Trump in 2016, for Brexit, for um, uh, 50 organizations in 9 countries and 4 continents. But the lift to downloading an app was so much more than just reading a text message or clicking that link. So it's sort of a roundabout way of saying that things I'm excited about are sort of getting back to what made texting exciting at the very beginning, which is two-way interactivity and personalization. I think AI can do a lot here. And I think we're just sort of scratching the surface, but there's a lot of quality controls around AI that still need to be ironed out. And so that's where the opportunity is. And that's a lot of what we're working on and others are working on in the texting space.
And if you're talking to clients who are kind of well, we have two kind of there's kind of two extremes, right? Like I don't want to try anything new, right? I want to give me just what we know works. And then there's the other side that's like, I want to try out the newest whiz bang tool. Um, how do you kind of approach those two different conversations with clients or
Well,
prospective
it's
clients?
sure. It's I was about to say it's fairly rare to find a client who hasn't already had an experience with texting, but we still do find them. It's very interesting how in the in down ballot and small races, especially campaigns that don't necessarily have a consultant or a campaign manager, they still are very new to texting. And so that is a growth industry. And I think the adjacent verticals to government, the official government texting is a new vertical, and we're seeing new use cases there. Um, at the other end of the spectrum, I think for people who've been texting a long time, they sometimes falsely accept that they are just going to get lower ROI cycle after cycle. And I think it's a false expectation. You see this particularly on the fundraising side, where they are sort of have this locked in time memory of how amazing their fundraising programs used to run in 2018 through 2020, and they've seen a fall off. Part of that's because we're in an off cycle. Um, and some other political environment issues of just not lot of legislation being pushed. But I think that where the innovation is happening are vendors who say, you know what, there is there is a better playbook, and it looks different than the playbook that we used to use. And we've seen this in older technologies like email, which is constantly was written off for a long time, and email's back, doors are back, direct mail is back, and so the medium matters less in the way you approach it. Just texting still has the advantage of the fact that it's highly visible to begin with. Um, so I think the hardest thing are vendors who had figured out a secret sauce of how they use texting and are struggling with updating um, to a new playbook. And so that's where the code of ethics is really helpful in sort of providing a foundation point of saying, okay, well, it used to be that we sort of like got text delivered by sort of gray routes, or, we used toll free, even though that's not what the phone carriers want to see political messaging go through. And so the ecosystem itself is forcing them to update a lot of things at once. And I think that really, between now and the 2026 primaries, which are going to be on us very soon, now is the time to do that deep work and kind of pay it forward to the year ahead.
Hmm. What is it about texting that distinguishes it kind of from the other mediums that kind of excites you most in terms of its opportunity for innovation?
I think a lot of it is the the mindset of the person when they're opening a text message versus when they're in email. I compare that a lot, or when they're on social. So when they're on email, they're probably in a sort of a business mindset, or they're kind of scattered in a lot of places. If they're in their text message inbox, they're thinking people. That's most of the reason why I open up my text message app is I want to reach out to a person, or a person's reached out to me. And so that's why I'm excited about the personal element of texting coming back, and less of this sort of like one message to 40,000 people, the same message. I think personalization is a huge opportunity, but informed personalization. Nothing is more off-putting to a voter than getting their name wrong, getting their issues wrong, and getting their political affiliation wrong. But nothing is more affirming and opening the door than getting their name right, their issues right, and their political preferences right. That's where you start to create a funnel of engagement. So that's very exciting. I think the fact that another area of opportunity is realizing what consumer habits are happening on the phone. It's no secret that we were already addicted to our phones before COVID. We got even more addicted during COVID. And in the last year or two, we've seen form video just take over the internet, and the ability of AI to create really engaging short form video is already taking over the ad platforms of Instagram, TikTok. And so I think the creative opportunity is to bring that sort of high engagement, short form video content into texting. And we pioneered the use of the ability to send a video text in 2020 because the only creative that campaigns had for texting in 2020 was their TV ads. So they would just stick their TV ad in a text message, and that was effective. That got in front of people. It was used at great scale, but that's not what people are used to seeing on their phone. They're used to seeing it on their big screen TV. And so we've seen a lot of campaigns move to really effective direct from candidate videos sent via text message, and then a human response on the other end. So there's a lot of creative juice, and I think the regulatory environment becoming more strict, I think will has led to people appreciating this channel that before when it had no rules, it was just sort of like get the text out the door, think about it at the end of your campaign cycle with the last money in the bank. And that's one other thing, not as a tangent, that's really critical is now that every campaign has to register, there is a lead time between when you are able to text and when you start the process. And so, what we do with our clients, beginning with the first onboarding call, is we start talking to them about what their plans are for texting, what their approach is, what their use case is, what sort of things they've texted for in the past, and what new techniques or strategies they might want to implement. And they have time actually to work on that now because they begin the registration process if not weeks, months in advance of when they first texted. And that's a sea change because, even in 2024, we had campaigns coming to us, the day before the election, the day of the election, the morning of the election saying, we want to text. That can't happen anymore in 2026. So more time is good because you can work a little bit more on what you're going to say, not just how you're going to reach voters.
I have so many thoughts. I think it was Katie Harbath wrote something recently about people, not only kind of the generational difference about how people, which platforms are spending their time on, but just also, I think to your point is that when the platform that you're on is depends on your state of mind, right? Are you kind of in a personal frame of mind? Are you more in a professional? Are you in a news gathering? Are you kind of shopping, getting things done for the family? And like how the where you're getting your information or the what tool or hardware device or what platform you're on, it really depends on what that state of mind is. And so being smart about what people are thinking about when they're going to that platform is really important to driving kind of the content as well as the message, right? And so yeah, it's really I'm trying to think of all because I kind of get frustrated sometimes when people text me for work because I'm like, I don't know how to work you into my workflow. Like I know how I manage my email inbox, but I still don't know how to professionally manage my text message inbox. Mm.
I think the key is to uh, use humor and to sort of like act like a good guest in that personal inbox. The best canvassers at the door, they're nice people. They lead with, "Hello, how's your afternoon going? Do you have 15 minutes?" This is sort of like best practice in sales. Is you strike up a conversation, you add some value, and then eventually there is an ask, but you realize that you're sort of like this isn't what necessarily the person you're talking to woke up as on top of mind. In 99% of cases, it's not. Now, there is a highly engaged political audience of people who are political news junkies who are already engaged, and that's great. But it's about that influence funnel and expanding that. That's where I think some of the we're coming up on Halloween, and I always love Halloween because of the creativity it inspires in our clients for um, their texting content. It generates the most positive response, and you know Halloween is always a few days or the week before the election, and so I've seen so many examples like the only thing scarier than Halloween is my opponent winning the election. I mean that's just like a really simple example, but like there's puns and they'll normally pull out some like good creative. I think that could extend the entire election cycle, and this is what great brands do. Great brands use what's happening in the pop culture and they are referential around it, and of course in influencer marketing, like it's these people providing some sort of value around an issue set that then leads into a political action. And I think that playbook has not been applied enough to texting. some of our partners do this really well, but that's still just like a huge area of opportunity. If you get someone to laugh, they will be less annoyed that they weren't expecting that particular text message at that time.
This is true. This is true. What about you had mentioned RCS over on the webinar. I'm curious about AI tools, chat bots. What do you are they kind of a flash in the pan? Are they transformational? What role do you think they're going to play?
I think it's completely natural to expect that AI texting will be um, not mainstream by 2026, but there will be people who are building good use cases for it. Um, I think a lot of this has to do with the fact, I think what's slowing it down is the responsibility on political campaigns to be truthful in their messaging. And so that's the thing that I think is the biggest technical challenge, is making sure that the AI does not hallucinate or make up a position for your candidate on the spot, because AIs tend to be very people pleasing and they very rarely admit when they're wrong. And so that's the challenge. It's not something that we chose intentionally in the messaging code of ethics, not to discuss AI separately. But the principles that are in the code of ethics can absolutely be applied to AI in terms of not being deceptive, about being truthful, about basically exercising quality control around your data, around your information, including what you share with voters. And so I think that is the hard work that is being done that will make it useful. I tend to believe, though, that because it's such a personal channel, um, the hybrid approach is probably going to be the most successful, where you use AI a bit, but have a very good escalation path to kicking it up to a human being. And the analogy I always use is like a call center for customer support. Um, there's a lot of efforts to use AI agents in customer support, but they don't work always very well. And the best examples I've seen in the corporate world pretty quickly kick it out to a real human being if the AI is struggling. And politics is tough. It is incendiary. It gets people's emotions up for good reason. And so, I'm not sure if a person is really going to want to engage for a long time with a bot if it is just missing the mark. So that remains to be seen. I think on the creative side, that also applies, where AI can create all this incredible content, but is it good and effective at moving your audience? And that's where having really good tracking analytics will make the difference.
That's great. That's great. Well, Thomas, thank you so much for this conversation. I want to remind folks that if you're curious about, and which you should be, are the political messaging code of ethics. They're available on the AAPC website at the aapc.org/advocacy. You can review the political messaging guidelines, as well as our digital fundraising guidelines, our data privacy guidelines, and our broader code of ethics. So please take a moment, always review that. And a reminder that these are living documents. If you are curious about them, or you think that there is a particular issue that we need to be tackling, my email inbox is always open. But I really, again, I said this over on the webinar, Thomas, but I'll say it here again, that just thank you so much for your leadership in developing these guidelines and kind of building the political will to get these things done. So really couldn't have done it without you. So thank you.
My pleasure. It's been a great experience, and it's going to lead to a better future.
That was our chat with Julian Thomas. Be sure not to miss an episode. Subscribe to the Future of Political Consulting by the AAPC on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And join the conversation by following us on social media at the AAPC. Thanks for listening.